Hey, listener. Thanks for tuning in again to Subjectively Correct Sports, the only podcast on the internet with two guys talking about sports and other topics from time to time. This week's show, I think it's a good one. We get into some NBA free agency rumors and predictions. We talk about perhaps the best baseball player of this generation and why no one's talking about him. All that and more on this episode of Subjectively Correct Sports. Man, 2018, what a time to be alive. Burger King Russia tweeted out about a week ago a message to the women of its nation, promising 3 million rubles, which I think is equivalent to 47,000 US dollars, and a lifetime supply of Whoppers, which, depending on the Russian woman, could far surpass the $47,000.
So I'm guessing there's a catch. Because you're having a hard time getting this out.
I'm sorry. I'm laughing to myself over here. 3 billion rubles and a lifetime supply of Whoppers for all women who get pregnant from world football stars.
Wow.
This is all in an effort to basically grow the game in their country and to inherit the, quote, best football genes.
So that's their 20-year plan. Their 20-year plan is to get pregnant by Messi and Ronaldo and hope something great happens 20 years from now.
That's right. Yeah. So 20 years from now, you'll have some very geographically, racially diverse football superstars coming out of Russia. They're all, but here's the problem they're overlooking. Each one of these kids is going to be severely malnourished from all the Whoppers they're eating.
Right. And the thing is, if this is what they're going public with, imagine the things the Russians are doing in private to make their soccer team better and stuff. You know what I mean?
Ivan Drago.
All right, welcome to Subjectively Correct Sports. My name's David. I'm here as always with Anthony. Excited to get into our stuff today. Let's start with some NBA free agency talk, Anthony, because this is the last week, the last episode we're going to record before NBA free agency goes down on July 1st, and there's a lot going on, a lot to talk about. What to you is the biggest free agency news, the biggest free agency murmurings that you've been hearing?
David, set your clocks. Well, your clock. I don't know how many clocks do you have?
Well,
set all of them?
I mean, I think about my phone, my computer, but I really only look at my phone. I don't have a watch. Who has a watch anymore? Unless you have like an Apple Watch, which is more just like an extension of a phone. So I'd say I have one clock.
Okay, you still talk. Okay. Set your phone to go off. Big time alarm. 9 p.m. Pacific. Midnight Eastern. If you're doing the 9 p.m. Pacific, it's going to be June 30th. If you're doing the midnight, it's July 1st.
This is turning into a math problem, dude. Get on with it.
All I'm saying is come July 1st, the NBA landscape is going to change dramatically. You've got Paul George, LeBron, possibly Kawhi, Chris Paul, Kevin Durant. Basically, like 5 or 6 of the top 10 players in the league can exercise either opt-outs or are unrestricted free agents. And so people are going to be moving, and I expect it to happen fast. Everything that's been out there, you had Brian Windhorst recently say he didn't think LeBron would delay his announcement. He thought he would announce before July 4th, and I think once that happens, everything else falls into place. So I think, so going into this weekend, I think here's what we need to look for. Where is LeBron James going? Or is he staying, right? I guess I think right now, if you looked at the odds, it's either he's staying in Cleveland or going to the Lakers. Although there's been rumblings that, maybe he has interest elsewhere.
Right. I mean, there's a bunch of hypothetical, circumstantial evidence. People have been spouting off on Twitter and stuff like that. Local radio in Miami is going crazy because he's been seen in Miami recently with his family. They went to a high school. There was like basketball tournaments down there. His son almost dunked down there, I guess, which everyone was freaking out about. But the most impressive missed dunk since JaVale McGee.
They almost dunk heard around the world.
No, that's JaVale McGee's dunk in the finals. That was glorious. But so it's but definitely LeBron is the biggest domino. And once the LeBron domino falls, just like the years past, it seemed like nothing was really going on, nothing was going on. LeBron chose where he was going, and then all those other pieces fell like that same day or the next couple of days. So really everyone's waiting on LeBron, but I really feel like I can't remember a year like this where it's not just one or two big free agents like LeBron and Kevin Durant moving around, but it's 4 or 5 big names that are really looking to move somewhere. I mean, all those names you mentioned, LeBron, CP3, Kawhi, Paul George, these are all legitimate superstars that are getting moved or could move. And I can't remember a time in the NBA where this happened.
Even a DeMarcus Cousins with only one Achilles, like he's a big piece, right?
Right.
So like I said, the landscape of the NBA from June 30th to July 1st could totally alter everyone's predictions for what happens next year. I don't expect that the Warriors won't be the favorite moving into next year, but I do think there's potential for 2 or 3 teams that were just non-players this year or non-factors to really have a legitimate shot come the 2019 finals.
Right.
So.
Well, you think, and I think as long as the Warriors as constituted probably won't be beaten. You know what I mean? I mean, I take that back because there was an epic collapse by the part of the Houston Rockets, and that they were able to sneak past them. So I think no team in the East could beat them, but the West has some chances. But if Chris Paul leaves the Houston Rockets, I think that chance for the Rockets goes away, and it becomes the Warriors conference again.
Unless the Lakers' plans all pan out, right?
And what plans are those?
Okay, so the long rumored plan of Paul George going to the Lakers, that's been on everyone's radar for over a year now. So that's option 1 for the Lakers: just get Paul George, re-sign Julius Randle, and maybe get a couple of other 1-year rentals, and then see what 2019 free agency looks like. Something we didn't even dream as if I'm the Lakers. Something Lakers fans did not even dream of. I think probably a few weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago at least, is the option of LeBron coming to the Lakers. I don't really know when this started. It seems like within the last few weeks is kind of when all the rumors started dropping that LeBron's going to come to the Lakers. And so if they land Paul George and LeBron, I think that's, you kind of pencil them in for the Western Conference Finals. But then there's this third scenario, which would just be insane, where Kawhi Leonard gets traded to the Lakers from the San Antonio Spurs. I don't think that's going to happen.
Right, and the Spurs have even come out recently and said, we will not trade Kawhi Leonard to a team in the Western Conference. Like, we'll trade him to the East so we don't have to mess with him, but we don't want him in our same conference, which is, I think, says a lot about Kawhi Leonard as a player and the way the Spurs feel about him. They're like, we don't want him in our conference if we're going to trade him away from our team.
Yeah, but if you were the Spurs, would you really turn down a better offer from a Western Conference team just so he's in the Eastern Conference? No. Just so you don't have to play him to play him 2 less times during the regular season, and then
maybe in the playoffs.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're the Spurs, every year you're thinking you have a shot at the championship, so eventually you'd face him anyways.
Right, and that's why that report sounded really strange to me. I was like, why does it matter where he's going? You do what's best for your team. If Kawhi Leonard if you trade with a Western Conference team and you get players that you really want and that you know is going to fit into your system and gel with the guys that you have now, you do that. You do what's best for your organization, no matter where he's going. And I think that's really weird that they would come out and say we won't trade him to a Western Conference team. It almost feels like something that was said offhand, just like maybe some executive or assistant GM said something like, oh, we won't trade him to the West because we don't want to deal with him, ha 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 ha. And then somebody caught wind of that and ran with it. That's what that sounds like to me, because I think it's silly business to say, oh, we won't deal with a certain group of people even if they give us the best deal.
But ultimately, I think that the 2 teams that could provide the best package would be the Celtics and the 76ers anyways, so this may just be a moot conversation. So
right, and like you said, come July 1st and then probably July 4th, everything that we're talking about now will just be nonsense, and we'll actually get some solid information from these players and where they're going, and then we'll see. So it's Jack.
So if I go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
So if I'm thinking of the 5 kind of big names where we really don't know where they're going to end up, Paul George, LeBron James, Kawhi Leonard, Chris Paul, and DeMarcus Cousins. You've got other players who are opting out. Like Kevin Durant, I think he's going to opt out, but there's really no indication he's going to go anywhere else. So those 5, where do you think each of those 5 ends up?
Okay, and this is rough because I really don't. I don't make predictions because I don't like to make predictions because it's so ridiculous. Like, these players are making decisions based off of so many things that we just don't know. We have no idea. I mean, there's family considerations that we don't think about. Like, you sent me over that Paul George video, where he's doing his
So Paul George is a part of a 3 episode kind of mini documentary series on his decision. I think it's called Paul George, My Journey. And the first of the 3 episodes aired during the 6 p.m. Eastern Sports Center. And they're only like 6 or 7 minutes long. And the first one kind of focused on his journey leading up to this offseason and his relationship with his agent and his time in Indiana and his 1 year on the Thunder. So kind of interesting. I don't think we were given any insights into his decision making.
No.
Although it is interesting, all of his family's in LA. His girlfriend and mother to his children, is really anxious to kind of settle in. And I know my wife really likes that you all live close and can help out with the kids from time to time. So I'm sure Paul George's girlfriend and mother of his children would like that benefit as well.
Right, and that's something that we don't think about as the common fan, the common man. I mean, we sit here and we think, oh, you're a basketball player, that's all you do. Like, we define these people by what they do. They play basketball. We don't look at the person beyond. Even players like LeBron James, who we think of as the basketball player. Right, he is the best basketball player in the world. He's the basketball player, so we only think of him as a basketball player. But I mean, he's even said, "I have kids now that have opinions. Like, my kids really loved Miami. My wife loved Miami, so that's why Miami is always going to be an option for LeBron James and his family. If they come to him, like if my kids came to me and said, "Dad, you could go to any city in the country and play basketball," everyone would want you. But we really, really love it in Toronto. That's going to sway my decision. It really, really is. And if LeBron's kids love LA, or if LeBron's kids...
Time out.
Sorry,
has anyone ever said that about Toronto?
No.
Sorry. I've never been. It just seems really cold.
Great basketball town, apparently, though. I mean, if you want to go to the playoffs, as a coach, and then win Coach of the Year and get fired, that's where you go.
Right. If you want to go get swept out of the playoffs as a number 1 seed, go to Toronto.
Exactly. The place to go. But anyway, so all that to say, there's so much going on behind the scenes. It's so hard to make predictions, and there's so many machinations going on, too many variables. I don't like to make predictions because I'm always wrong. What do you think? Where are these players going to go?
I love being wrong. Paul George is going to the Lakers. LeBron is going to the Lakers. Kawhi is not getting traded before the start of the season. Chris Paul is staying with the Rockets. And that's interesting. Well, let me just make this last. And DeMarcus Cousins, he's staying with the New Orleans, whatever they call their team these days.
Pelicans.
I think it's the Hornets. Oh, my goodness. It's the Pelicans. That's right. They've had so many name changes. It's just ridiculous. So with the New Orleans basketball team. With DeMarcus Cousins, I think it'll be interesting because he's coming back from a torn Achilles. He's a big man. The history is not good with this injury. You lose your explosiveness, and that's what DeMarcus Cousins relied on a lot of was his athleticism. And so, even though he was out of shape, his natural athleticism was just just made him a top 3 center in the league. So I think what they do with him is maybe a 1-and-1 deal. I don't think you'll like it, but I think that's a good option. Is a team option for the second year. So you pay him basically the year to rehab because he's not going to come back until maybe February, March, right? And so you get to see him for the last couple months of the season, and maybe part of the playoffs if they make the playoffs. And then you can evaluate based on that, little bit. Well, do we want to bring him back? You have the team option. Again, I don't know if he'll go for it, but I don't know where else he's going to get, really, really decent offers. So with CP3, a little interesting thing here. He went to the Rockets last season, right? He opted into the final year of his contract with the Clippers.
Right.
under the wink wink kind of deal with the Rockets that he would be traded to the Rockets. He'd play out the final year of his contract. When his contract expired and he became an unrestricted free agent, which he is now, the Rockets would then offer him a max contract, which would keep him under contract until he's something like 37, 38 years old, paying him $40+ million, towards the end of his contract. And by all accounts, the previous ownership of the Houston Rockets was fine with this deal. Daryl Morey orchestrated it all, GM of the Rockets. But lo and behold, during last season, the previous owner sold the team, and I don't have can't remember the name of the current owner, but the current owner, at least, is rumored to be expressing some, I guess, feeling that Chris Paul's maybe not worth a max deal at this stage in his career. And so there have been tensions between Chris Paul and the team. And so it'll be really interesting to see what happens there. Do they live up to their end of the bargain and offer him the max? Chris Paul stated that he wouldn't take less than the max. So if he's not getting the max from the Rockets, where is he getting the max from?
Yeah, those are really good points.
So all this, within the next 2 to 3 weeks is going to become much more clear, and hopefully by the next time we talk, some of these moves have occurred.
Oh, there will be some action, definitely. So I wanted to move on here because I wanted to point something out that I think is really fascinating in sports right now, particularly with baseball. So there's a player right now who, in baseball, in the American League, he's hitting .325, okay, which is amazing. Has 23 home runs, 48 RBIs, 13 stolen bases, has an OPS of 1.118, and is having an amazing defensive year by the metrics and by just the basic stats like errors and things like that. And he's not even a story right now. Nobody's talking about him. Paul George has his own docuseries, and this player having one of the best seasons in the history of Major League Baseball, which has been around for 150 years, and no one's talking about him. So Mike Trout is that player. Mike Trout is a generational talent. Mike Trout right now is like a young LeBron James in Cleveland. The best player of his generation playing the best baseball that we've seen in a long time, and no one's talking about him. And that got me thinking, what is this saying about, what is that saying about baseball? What is it saying about Mike Trout? Am I missing something here? Is it just because his games start at 9 p.m. Eastern time and end after midnight Eastern time and no one's watching him? What's going on with Mike Trout, and why isn't he more famous? He should be the biggest athlete in America.
David, I think you're overlooking one crucial piece of information.
What's that?
The man is named after a fish.
Yeah.
He's named after aquatic life. Tim Salmon, also a fish player. No one cared about him.
Can you name another fish player, or do we tap you out with salmon?
Pretty sure there's a bass, but again, we don't even know about him, right?
Fish. So
the fish is the most boring of any pet. Okay, if he were Mike Labrador, he'd be on SportsCenter every night. All right, if he were Mike Cheetah, on the cover of Sports Illustrated every week. He's a fish. No one cares about fish. They're a background pet. Get rid of the last name Trout. That's my advice. Okay. We just solved baseball. We need to change the boring names in baseball. We need more guys like, I don't know, Tennessee Mountain Landis. We'll be golden. Usain Bolt. I don't know if that was his given name. I think it was. But you need a name like that, right? And you become a global superstar.
Right. Well, what happened to the nicknames in baseball, right? Hammerin, Hank, Aaron. Boom. Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
The big unit, Randy Johnson, Hall of Famer. And then we have Mike Trout.
Mike Bobber Trout.
Oh, jeez.
So, okay, in all seriousness, because this is a serious show.
Sorry.
I think this is more a reflection of baseball. And here's the greatest thing about baseball, and the most frustrating thing about baseball as a fan, is that it is so unpredictable. You get so excited about the talent on your team, and on paper that talent seems like it should win the division, go far in the playoffs, maybe even win the World Series. And And that team that you have such high expectations for and realistic expectations ends up middle of the pack. They miss the playoffs entirely. Maybe they're in last place. Baseball is such a crapshoot. You can amass such the best players, and if everyone goes hitless that night, which even the best players do, you lose the game, right? And then if that happens enough times over a season, you're a bad team. If the season ended today, the Angels, who have, by all accounts, a really good team,
and one of the best players of his generation.
And the best player of his generation, who is on base half of his at bats,
right.
He ends up on base. They would not make the playoffs if the season ended today. Whereas in basketball, if you have the best player in the game, you're making the playoffs, and you're probably going far in the playoffs. In football, if you have the best quarterback, you're probably going to make the playoffs, and chances are you'll go far. If you look at just look at any year in the past 10 years, which quarterbacks make the playoffs and which quarterbacks make the Super Bowl.
Right, and I think a perfect example of that is Aaron Rodgers, because Mike Trout and Aaron Rodgers, I think, are kind of similar talent-wise, like generational talents. Aaron Rodgers can carry his team to the Super Bowl, or carry his team to the playoffs at least. He really doesn't have much around him. Mike Trout's the same way. Mike Trout is that good. He's as good at being a baseball player as Aaron Rodgers is as being a quarterback. But because of the unpredictability of baseball and all the stuff that you're talking about, a bounce goes your way, a bounce goes their way, and the best player in the world right now could end up not even winning his division, not even getting in the wild card, which is crazy.
Yeah. So, I think this is more about baseball than Trout. He's obviously a fantastic player. He doesn't get the promotion he does, but I think that's more a reflection of his team. If his team started to make some noise, if his team were in the playoffs, if they were contending for a World Series every year, I think he'd be up on every kid's wall. So, unfortunately, he's just a fish.
So, Baker Mayfield is a fun quarterback. There aren't a lot of fun quarterbacks. I feel like Cody Bellinger was born to be a quarterback because he's boring. And a lot of the quarterbacks just give you that quarterback talk where they're like, oh, my team, they play well, me quarterback, offensive line do so good, coach is so great, good game plan. I mean, it's like a script that they read from every single week. I mean, Russell Wilson's amazing at it. He's like a magician. He can say nothing for hours. It's incredible. But then Baker Mayfield goes on Colin Cowherd's show, and Colin Cowherd calls him out. And he says, I don't like this play. You throw a touchdown pass, then you go running off, and you go off by yourself to celebrate. Why aren't you celebrating with your team? I want my guy to celebrate with the team. And then Baker Mayfield's reaction is great to me. He looks at him and he's like, did you see the rest of the game? Did you see me celebrate with my teammates the other 3 times that we scored before that? And he was like, oh yeah, but you should be over there with your teammates. And he said, I was over with the student section, and I went over to the sidelines to celebrate with my team there. Why are you going to isolate this one play and judge me off of this one play? And I thought, that's what we do. That's what the media and the sports media especially does, is they hyperanalyze that one moment where it's like, okay, so this player did this thing, therefore this is that player. And if, and you can pick and choose what you want to hyperanalyze to form your opinion of that player and then sell that opinion, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I love that he brought up that there were, 3 or 4 other touchdowns that game that he was a part of, and every one of those touchdowns, he was in the end zone celebrating with his team. It was that one time, the fans had traveled, he went over to the student section to hype them up, and of course that's the one clip that Colin Cowherd pulls out. And this is his MO, and this is the MO of so many sports talk radio and these embrace debate talk shows. You're just looking for the hot take. You're looking for something that you can take a hard stand on that'll and I think what they're doing is they're taking the opinion that they know is going to be the unpopular opinion, so to incite this rage, and we rage watch, we rage listen, right? And we think we're so much smarter than the person talking, when really, I think they're a lot more reasonable than the personas they portray themselves to be. Someone like Colin Cowherd, I used to listen to him almost daily, and I just stopped because I couldn't handle his hot takes. I
No,
couldn't
I'm
handle
the same
him.
way. I used to listen to him a lot,
Yeah.
and after a while, I was just like, oh, I just can't anymore. It's just too much.
Yeah, I mean, he thinks. But anyways, he doesn't like Russell Westbrook. He doesn't like. I mean, seems like most NBA superstars he doesn't like. I know he didn't like Kobe Bryant. That really got under my skin.
I can't imagine
And-
why.
Yeah, and these are legitimately like great players, and he'll find like one thing to nitpick, and it's the reason that this person can't win a championship, or this person is undraftable, like Baker Mayfield, who went what number in the draft did he go?
One?
One. That's right. The guy he classified as undraftable went first overall.
Right. And one of
Granted, it was the Cleveland Browns. So,
Yeah. Who won that
so
one,
if
really,
any-
right?
Yeah.
Well, and my favorite thing about that whole situation is Colin Cowherd is probably one of those guys that was like, we need less celebrating in football and we need more humility in football.
Yeah.
And then he goes over to Baker Mayfield and says, go celebrate with your teammates more.
Yeah. But, all of this speaks to a kind of a broader problem. We won't get into it, but I think everyone realizes it's happening. It's just we have to produce so much content on radio, on TV, that we're just filling time. And we're just coming up with opinions that are going to get eyeballs and ears and ratings. And so whether it's Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, FS1, ESPN, we're going to have some divisive topic that we're going to talk about, and we're going to pick out the parts that are just the most salacious, the most contentious, and hopefully that drives ratings, no matter what the kind of repercussions are to everyone who's listening. And I'm not saying like sports talk radio is dividing families, but I don't know. I just think there could be a little less vitriol, a little bit more reasonableness in the entire industry.
So this time of year has been really fun. I've been able to get into the FIFA World Cup more than I have in previous years. I'm a big Argentina fan. I lived there for a couple years. I fell in love with Lionel Messi as a football player. I fell in love with the people of Argentina. So to see their football team do well makes me really happy. It's kind of like not a second home, but it's kind of like my soccer home, because it's where I started appreciating soccer. And Anthony, you and I got to go see the Germany-Sweden game that ended with an amazing goal in the 98th minute, or whatever ridiculous amount of stoppage time they put to the end of that game. But that goal, basically what amounts to a buzzer beater in soccer for Germany. And it was so exciting. We were with a group of guys, and it was so much fun. But one of the most touching things I've seen in a long time, I saw on Twitter, had to do with the World Cup. There was a Brazilian soccer fan who was deaf and blind. And he was the only way he's able to watch Brazil play is he has I don't know if it's a friend or someone he has hired to do this for him, but a man was signing on his hands and positioning his hands on a little soccer pitch that they had cut out or made somehow so that he would know where the ball was and things like that. So he was watching and listening to the action on TV and moving his friend's hands, his deaf and blind friend's hands, so that he knew what was going on in the game. And his reaction when Brazil scored and the way he was able to understand what happened because of what was going on with the signing, it touched my heart in a really special way, because it just reminded me what sports are all about. Sports are all about connecting us. It's about feeling united, even though we're at a time where dividing people seems to be so easy and dividing people earns you money. We can feel united with something, and that can be something as silly as a soccer game, but it meant so much to this man, and it reminded me of the times when sports meant so much to me, and it really made me fall in love with sports again. And sports keeps doing that. Sports keeps giving me reasons to fall in love with it over and over and over again, and that's why I think I'm a sports fan and why I'll be a lifetime sports fan.
Yeah, that video was incredible, and I share your sentiment. We love sports because it brings out the childlike kind of hope that we all have, the envisioning ourselves as something more, and then but also this kind of collective this we're all in this together kind of mentality that you were talking about when you're all cheering for the same team. You've got the group of fans that you connect with, and it's.
But even you said earlier in the show, you kept talking about the Lakers as we, like you had something to do with the team because you're such a part. You feel such a part of it as a Lakers fan.
Yeah, and so sports, it has the ability, for whatever reason. I think the reasons we talked about and many more to just bring out these emotions in us, and it's just fantastic. So unless you're rooting for a fish.
Poor Mike Trout. Okay, so I don't know if you saw this story. I don't remember if I shared it with you, but the most amazing thing happened at a Diamondbacks game recently. So one of their relief pitchers, Archie Bradley, is warming up in the bullpen, and he knows he's got the next guy. He knows the next guy up is someone that he is going to pitch against. And he's like, oh man, I really need to use the bathroom. The count gets to like 2-1. The count gets to 2-2. So he knows this at-bat is almost over. So he's like, I gotta go to the bathroom. So he runs to the bathroom in the bullpen to pee, right? Oh, but there was a little more going on than just a little bit of pee. So while he's trying to hurry and pee, he poops himself a little bit. So he knows that in a pitch or two, he has to go out and run onto that field and pitch an inning, but he has just messed himself. So he cleans it up as best as he can, runs out of the bullpen, and has to run straight onto the field with poop in his pants, runs out to the mound, and he pitches a, pun intended, solid inning, and gets out of the inning. And no one in the dugout believed him. They were all like, no, this didn't happen, until the bullpen called the dugout and was like, God, you'll never guess what just happened.
I want to say it probably couldn't happen to anyone other than someone named Archie.